Alright guys, so today I'm going to do a lesson on negatives. I'm going to start out with adding and subtracting negatives, and then I will do a lesson on multiplying and dividing with negatives. Okay? So first of all, I'll start out with two problems. We have a regular old 3 minus 3 and 3 plus 3. Now those are very simple, but there's a reason that I'm showing these to you. It's to go back and think what is happening when we add and subtract numbers. This is going to help us out with negatives in a sec. So let's hop down here to the number line. And when we look at the number line, we can see we're starting at 3 because that's our first number that we have in both situations. Now when we're adding, we are moving over to the right, okay? Because you can see on our number line, all of our positive numbers move to the right. Okay, so when we add 3, we're jumping 3 spaces. We're jumping over here to 6. Now when we subtract 3, we're just doing the same thing. We're moving the same number of spaces, but we're moving this time to the left, okay? Because this is in the negative direction. As you can see, the numbers are getting smaller and smaller, and then smaller and smaller this way. Okay, so now let's hop down here. And we've got two problems. We've got 3 plus a negative 3 and 3 minus 3. Well, actually, these problems are exactly the same, and I'll show you why. Up here, we already did our 3 minus 3. We started out with 3, and we moved backwards to the left 3 spaces. Well, if we are adding a negative 3, we're also moving towards the negative space 3 times, okay? So we start at the 3 and we're adding our negative 3, or in other words, moving towards our negative space. 1, 2, 3. Okay? So adding negatives is all about which direction you're moving. Okay? If you're adding a negative, you're going to be moving towards the negative space. If you're adding a positive, you're going to be moving towards the positive space. Now, one thing I forgot to show you is what would happen if you were subtracting a negative. What would happen if you're subtracting a negative? Well, if we subtract a positive, like up here, we're going to move towards the negative. If we're subtracting a positive, we're going this way. But what would happen if we were subtracting a negative? Well, this is where it gets a little tricky. If I were doing, for example, 3 minus negative 3, it would actually be the same thing as 3 plus 3. Okay, so whenever you are subtracting a negative, you're going to actually move to the positive space. So 3 minus negative 3 would be the same thing as 3 plus 3. Okay? All right. So now I'm going to move down here to how to multiply and divide with negatives. How to multiply and divide with negatives. Well, this one's a little bit easier to comprehend. I've got a little strategy that Valeria taught me, and I think it's really helpful when you're working with multiplication and division of fractions. Now, it goes like this. Friend and a friend makes a friend. A friend and a friend makes a friend. But if you have a friend and an enemy together, there's going to be an enemy relationship. There's going to be an enemy relationship. However, you probably heard this, an enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, that's the same thing for negative numbers. An enemy and an enemy makes a friend. So let's go over and show what that looks like in terms of our numbers. So up here, we've got 3 times a negative 3, 3 times a negative 3. Now we can imagine our positive 3 as a friend. See how I put the positive down here? And the negative 3, I have symbolized as an enemy down here, negative. So here I have a friend and an enemy, or a positive and a negative, 2 opposites. Now we can see that this middle one is like that relationship. It's a positive and a negative together. Now we know if we have a friend and an enemy together, we're going to end up with an enemy or a negative. Okay, so in this situation, positive and a negative, our answer will be negative. 3 times negative 3, negative 9. Friend and enemy, enemy. Okay? But look up here in this situation. Here we've got an enemy and an enemy, or a negative and a negative. Now looking down here to this situation, we've got enemy and enemy, or negative and negative. We're going to get a friend. Therefore, -3 times -3 is going to be equal to +9. Okay? All right, I'm going to flip it over on the back. We're going to do some practice problems. You can pause the video here to try these out on your own, and then I'll go through them with you. Okay, so the first one we have here is a -8 plus a 3. Okay, now just a forewarning, if you are able to solve these no problem, then this would be a good time to turn off the video and try to move on to the next part of the assignment. Okay, but if you need more help, go ahead and keep watching. Okay, so here we have a -8 and a 3. So we're going to go back down to the number line. The number line is our friend. Okay, we're going to start out with our -8. So hopping down here, I find my -8 on the number line, and we're adding 3. So we have to ask ourselves, which direction on the number line are we going? Now remember, to the right, this way, is all of my positive friends. And to the left, this way, are all my negative friends. Okay? So since we're adding a 3, we're going to be going to the right on the number line. So we're going to hop 3 spaces on the number line. So -8, -7, -6, -5. So -3 and -8 plus a 3 is equal to a -5, or moving to the right on our number line. Okay? Now moving over here, -10 minus 3, okay? We're going to go ahead and we're going to start at our -10, which is right here in our negative space on the number line. Let me zoom in a little bit. And since we are subtracting our 3, we've got to think again, which way are we moving on the number line? Well, whenever we add positive numbers, we move to the right, and whenever we take away positive numbers, we're going to move to the left. So that's what we're going to do. We're taking away 3, we're going to move to the left 3 spaces. -11, 1, -12, 2, -13, 3. Our answer is -13. Okay? Now what if we had something like 5 plus a -3? 5 plus a -3. Well, we're going to start where we need to be on the number line, 5 right here. Okay, now this time we're not adding a positive, we're not going to the right, we actually need to go to the left because we're adding a negative number. That means we're going more towards the negative land, okay? So we start at our 5 and we're going to add -3, or in other words, we're taking away 3 spaces. So 4, 3, 2. We took away 3. We get to +2, okay? And our last one, what if we had a 5 and we're taking away 8? So notice that our subtrahend is actually larger than this number, okay? So we're going to start at 5. Now we're taking away a whole number, which means we're moving over to our right. So we're going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And look, now we're at 0, but we still have 3 more to go. So we'll keep going into the negatives. -1, -2, -3, okay? All right, so here's some practice problems for multiplication and division. So just to remember, back to our strategies, friend and friend is a friend, friend and enemy is an enemy, and enemy and an enemy is a friend. Okay, so we're gonna hop back over here. Pause the video if you wanna try these on your own. I'm going to go over them in just a sec. All right, so the first one is 5 times a -3, or in other words, a positive times a negative. Now, thinking back to our friend and enemy, this is a friend and an enemy. So friend and enemy is always going to be an enemy, or positive and negative is always a negative. So 5 times -3 is -15, -15, okay? Hopping over here, it looks tricky because of those parentheses, but that's just kind of keeping the negative all together. It's just showing us that we're not subtracting anything. It just shows us that our negative is there, okay? So it's just really 3 over -1. Nothing strange here. So 3 over negative 1 is going to be negative 3. Or in other words, 3 divided by negative 1 is just a negative 3. Okay? Friend, enemy, enemy. Okay, so here's the same kind of problem, just written differently with our traditional division symbol. Here we have a negative, and also we have a negative here. This is going to be negative 12 divided by negative 4. So looky here. We've got an enemy and an enemy. Enemy and an enemy are going to make a friend, or negative and a negative are going to make a positive. Negative 12 divided by negative 4 is equal to positive 3. Positive 3. Okay. All right, last one. Oh my gosh, looky here. We've got a negative, negative, and a negative. Goodness sakes, what are we going to do? Well, not to worry. Even though we have a lot of negatives, we can still figure this out, no problem. We've got an enemy and an enemy. We know two enemies make a friend, so let's go ahead and get that one first. Negative 4 divided by negative 1 is equal to positive 4. Now we have a positive 4 here, so you can think of that as now positive. Now we've got a positive and a negative, okay? So now we've got an enemy and a friend. So we're going back to the enemy friend is an enemy, or negative positive is a negative. So positive 4 times negative 1 is equal to negative 4, okay? All right, so hopefully that video was helpful for you. Please go in the classroom and check for some practice problems, okay? Bye-bye.